Good morning, everybody. All right, thank you for tuning in to We'll Fix the Team. All right, today is another Nissan day. So what we have here is another Frontier, same year model, ironically, but now we have some crankshaft sensor codes. And let me flip the camera around so you get an idea what we're looking at here. So what we got going on, 4-liter V6. It's got a bank 1 camshaft sensor signal interrupt, or like intermittent signal. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to swap both sensors out. We're going to take them and replace them both. Now, they are at the back of the engine. I'll give you that. And here we go. This one is at the very back. I like to replace both because that way, if one's going bad, the other one's not far behind it. But you'll have to. They're at the very back of the cylinder head, and you won't see them even if I shine the light in there. But I'm going to try. We'll try. Okay, so I've got a light, and I'm going to try to use this really super long screwdriver to point it out. But this is the bank 1 sensor, by the way, in case you just want to do the one sensor. Totally up to you. Let me see if I can get it's down there in the bottom. We'll go past this one here, and it's that one there. I'm touching it. It's kind of down deep right here. Like I said, it's intimidating in a sense, but if you can kind of move your hands around and get in some tight places and be sort of articulate, this really isn't too bad to do. There's one 10mm bolt that holds it on, and this stupid, I don't want to pull on this line here because that's plastic. That plastic gets real brittle over time, and it'll be fine if you leave it alone, but you can be heavy-handed in this area and find yourself in a little bit of a mess. I'm going to be accessing it. I'll show you how I'm going to do it, which I already got. The retaining bolt is broken loose already, and pretty basic tools all I used on this. It's a 10mm. I have a fine tooth ratchet, which isn't always a have to, but it's really nice because you can get the most of the range of movement in little increments. However, I'll give you a little hint. A fine tooth or a micro tooth ratchet typically doesn't have the same strength as a more coarse tooth, where you have to move it further to catch the next click, because they kind of like cut the size of the teeth down so they could put a lot of them in there, so you don't have a whole lot of backing behind it. And so I tend to use these when I'm not going to jerk nothing or pull too hard, But anyhow, it's got a floppy end on it. It helps you get in there, so you can kind of angle it out, and then you'll turn it counterclockwise to break that nut loose, or bolt loose, I'm sorry. And after that, most of the time, in most circumstances, the bolt is pretty easy to turn. You can get in there by your hand and turn. I'm going to just reach in down from this side here so I can reach around the back. Just don't get any ideas, guys. But I'll find. You have to kind of fumble around a little bit. Even I do. You have to you can look with your light. You can see there's a little coolant sensor. And then once you get your hand on it, you can go on the other side of it, and you can just spin that bolt by hand and just carefully pull it out of there. And then now going back with it, now you're going to say that connector. There's a connector on the back of that, and I'm going to pull the sensor out with the pigtail hooked to it, so I can actually, because the way that Nissan does they're really good connectors. I'll give them that. They are not coming off of there under any circumstance unless you manually take them off, but you have to push. I could get to this one. But you have to push this green part down. You have to push this green part, a lot of spring pressure. There's a spring on both sides of that, and it's heavy. Man, you have to push really hard down, and then you have to kind of pull up at the same time. Yeah, I know, right? And doing that on this end, I could get that done. Now on that end, I'm not going to try to do that. I'm just going to, there's enough pigtail where I can pull it up out of there without causing any harm, and then I'll release it once I get it up to the firewall there. So let me make a little progress here, and I'll be right with you in a second. All right, guys, so we got the bank 1 sensor out. It has the straight end. Now the bank 2 sensor will have end will be inverted or at an angle, like a 33.526 degree angle. And you can see that we've got metal in the center on the little part that reads. That could be a problem. That could be part of the cause. And if you're a do-it-yourself guy and you're pretty quick on getting this out, and it doesn't cost you anything on labor, it pays. It might, you could probably clean that off with an air hose and a toothbrush and get that little metal fragments off of there. And try that to see if the sensor goes to working properly again, because that can cause a malfunction. It's sort of like it's almost not a read switch, but it has to read magnetic field flux change, because it sends a square wave pattern to the computer. You'll have a center pin that's a ground, a 5-volt reference, and you'll have a square wave output on the other one of your pins. Now, I am not sure which one is which. I'm not going to lie. I have to look on my ALLDATA to do a pin out on that. But if you do a back probe, a lot of times you can get an idea which one is which. And, you know, anyways, that's a whole other video. But I'm going to put new sensors in, because it'll cost, for what I can get these out for, it's easier just to go ahead and just put the new ones in. I've got good ones to put back in here. I would recommend using Nissan parts on Nissan stuff. So we'll do that. We'll put this one in, and we'll go over. I always like to do the hard side first. Let me flip the camera on so you can see me. Yes, we've had a big week, so if I look tired, I'm not. I always do this, but I am tired, but it's okay. We run. Plus the North Carolina weather here is just wreaks havoc on all your sinuses. It's beautiful weather, but I don't know. I could go on for days about what could be causing that, but we're not going to. All right, anyhow, so I'm going to swap both sensors out. We're going to clear the codes. We're going to let the vehicle run, get good and warmed up. We'll drive it around. If it checks out okay, then we'll let the customer drive it, knowingly that this is what we're going to try. I'm always upfront about stuff like that, but Nissans are funny. If you own these vehicles or have worked on Nissans, you know just how wonky that you'll get codes for camshaft, crankshaft sensor. There's so many little intricate parts with the variable valve timing on these things that do weird stuff. And if things get worn, like BMWs, whenever the cam galleys will get worn on the BMWs, like say for instance, if somebody has sort of a half wore out BMW and it's been run low on oil, and then you and what happens is it can gall the head a little bit, and you'll lose oil pressure at the top of the head. That causes everything to go weird, because your variable valve timing doesn't respond to the pressure necessary, and you'll get codes where, like, over retarded camshaft sensor codes, and you're messing with the actuators, you know, all this stuff, and come to find out you just lost oil pressure up there a lot of times. There's enough to keep it lubricated, but not enough to actuate the retarders that have to use like 80 to 100 pounds of oil pressure to actually make them work. Power stroke diesel motors, Fords, they have 2 pumps in them. They got one that operates the injectors, no joke, to use oil pressure to run a lot of that stuff. And so it has an oil pressure for the engine that lubricates it. You've got a separate oil pressure at the top to pump the injectors. It's crazy. Anyhow, we're going to get off subject, but what we're going to do now is swap the sensors out, crank her up, run it, and if it checks out, we'll make a bill on it, send it out the door. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Will Fix It team. This other sensor here is just the same, by the way. So that's the easy access to these, and it's something you can do on your own if you just take a little time and use your little hand to be real careful. All right, guys, I'm out. Bye. Lots of love.